It's time for Health Futures with Cypress Home Care Solutions, Bob Roth. This is Arizona's only show dedicated to providing you with expert advice on how to live a longer, healthier, and happier life. To learn more, call 602-264-8009. That's 602-264-8009. Now, here's your host, Bob Roth.
Good afternoon. You're listening to Health Futures, Taking Stock in You. I'm your host, Bob Roth, and it must be Friday, and indeed it is. We come at you live every Friday right here from Money Radio Studios in the Air Park, 1510 AM, 105.3 FM, and the World Wide Web, moneyradio1510.com. If this is the first time you're tuning in, our show is about how our older adult population can live a healthier, happier life. They do that by listening here, not to me, but these extraordinary guests I have in the show. And today I have two extraordinary guests here with me. I've got Sarah Kearney. She's the executive director of the Blue Zones Project Scottsdale. And I got Maureen Ulrich, and she's the marketing engagement lead. And the Blue Zone Project Scottsdale. I'm so glad to have you guys here. I learned a little bit about this earlier in the year. I was privileged to have Todd Laporte, who is the CEO of Honor Health here, and he was talking about this. So I think what a great time to be talking about this as we get ready to hit our fourth quarter of the year and really talk about health and aging and blue zones. It's just really related. So welcome to the show.
Thanks for having us.
Well, it's good to have you both here on the show. And, you know, I hear about blue zones all the time, and I know that we have super agers, and I know that there are 5 blue zones in the world, and would love for you guys to talk a little bit about them. And then I really want to talk about the project and dig deep into that. So could you, or one of you, or both of you, tell me a little bit about the blue zones?
Yes, so Dan Buettner, who is a National Geographic researcher and explorer and New York Times bestselling author, over 20 years ago, he and his research team were tasked at finding the fountain of youth. So with being unsuccessful in that, what they did find were 5 regions of the world that had the highest propensity and populations of centenarians. And not only were these individuals living to be 100, they were living quality, good 100 years, free of chronic disease, illness, stress, and fatigue. And so so those original blue zones, as you alluded to and mentioned, Sardinia, Italy, Ikaria, Greece, Okinawa, Japan, Loma Linda, California, and the Nicoya Peninsula in Costa Rica.
Loma Linda, California. Who would have known? You're right. I mean, right here. I understand the Japanese culture, and I certainly understand Italy. It must be the wine. Or the food, I don't know, and Greece too, but I mean, even in California.
Yes,
Loma.
And so really behind Loma Linda as being identified as an original blue zone, there is the highest population of Seventh-day Adventists. And so what was found in each of these 5 regions is that they all had common lifestyle habits and practices. And so that really evolved what we call the Power 9. And those things really are around moving naturally in your environment. So these individuals aren't running marathons and pumping iron, but they're getting out and they're moving naturally in the environment that they're in. It's also eating wisely. Most of it is around a plant-based diet, but not vegetarian or vegan. Having sense of purpose and meaning and why you wake up in the morning is a huge component that attributes to a lot of the great research around extending your life and longevity. So there's just a variety of things, putting your loved ones first. All of these communities celebrated and practiced these principles in a variety of different ways, but they were all the 9 kind of common denominators in terms of lifestyle habits.
So, I mean, you've given us, understanding of the blue zones and certainly some of the habits that they follow to be able to be these super agers and do this successfully. So as I shared with you and our listeners, Todd Laporte was here talking about the blue zones and how Honor Health had this partnership. So I would love to take a deeper dive into this and what exactly is the Blue Zone Project, because Scottsdale isn't any of those places, at least today, and I know we hope it to be. So Please, if you would, indulge me and our listeners.
And that's what's most interesting about the original Blue Zones and Blue Zones projects now moving forward, is that our communities across the country will never be an original Blue Zone except for Loma Linda, California. And that's because they weren't trying to be those places. So really what Blue Zones Projects is doing across the country is reverse engineering communities and lifestyles and habits and traits and small nudges to make the healthy choice the easy choice, and also empowering everyone everywhere to live better and longer. So Todd Laporte really is our original Blue Zones Project Scottsdale champion because of, you know, it's been something that's been a passion project for him for a long time. And so he really initiated the conversation and got the conversation started as they relate to Scottsdale moving forward. So over a year ago, Honor Health, in partnership with the city of Scottsdale, funded a assessment and feasibility by Blue Zones nationally. So Blue Zones came into the community, held a variety of town halls, focus groups, a kickoff event, just really meeting with important stakeholders, the business community, residents of the community, to gauge whether Scottsdale is ready for Blue Zones project. And ultimately, the reason for that is because Blue Zones projects don't work unless it's community-led and community-driven and
So
community-wide. So if your community isn't on board in supporting a Blue Zones project, you're pretty much set up for failure out of the gates. So that's an important part of this piece. So Blue Zones projects have been implemented in over 75 communities across the country.
Wow.
Scottsdale is the first to embark on this journey in the state of Arizona. So we are thrilled and excited to start the process and be hopefully a great example in becoming a Blue Zone certified community at the end of about a total of 4 years and 9 months. So just shy of 5 years. So we are in our foundation and planning phase. What that means is we're really trying to uncover and identify a blueprint of strategy, transformation, activation over the course of 4 years of work. We are hiring a local team. We're about halfway full. And so we're still hiring to really have our team of local experts that can take the Blue Zones national knowledge and implement it and stack hands with the local expertise and our community to ensure both a attainable, meaningful, and powerful Blue Zone project for Scottsdale.
So are you still in the planning stages, or has it kicked off yet?
So we technically have kicked off the
Okay.
beginning, but the first 9 months is foundation and planning.
Okay.
So the 3 areas that we're really working in are people, places, and policy. And what that means is that we are going to be working from a places standpoint with our schools, our work sites, our faith-based and civic organizations, people in the community, our residents, and then policy areas as well around food systems, tobacco and alcohol, as well as the built environment. And what we're going to do is, based on those 3 areas of impact, we really are within people's life radius, where people spend the most time, where they live, where they work, where they play, where they pray, where they thrive. And so
I love that.
Blue Zones really identifies it as a 20-mile radius. In Scottsdale, most would beg to differ that radius is much smaller, where they spend the majority of their time.
Well, certainly where they spend the majority of their time, but I've lived here a long time, and I can't believe that Scottsdale has 18 exits on the 101, because I was here long before the 101 was. So Scottsdale is a huge mass, but really focusing in on the density of Scottsdale. And, you know, one of the challenges I would imagine you have is that you have people that don't live here year round. And it's probably very different from some of the other Blue Zones, because we have people that just winter here and they're not here during the summer. We have Canadians that come down. We have people from Chicago who come here, people from Detroit, just all over. Does that change the landscape? Does that change your methodology in terms of how to get the message out there?
Yeah, well, and so there are certain certification criteria and metrics that we're going to be basing our project and our scope of work off of. And so we're combining a variety of different data summary points so that we can really get a good number on what does our population look like. And in order to really achieve those measures that we're looking to achieve, we really have to get to a critical mass in all of those areas. And so based on census data, based on City of Scottsdale data as an important community partner with us as well, we're able to, again, kind of overlap and outline all of that information so that we can really get a good gauge on what that number means for our community, because we are very much so a winter visitor population. We're a very tourism-driven population as well.
Now, listen, Maureen, Sarah, I have so many more questions. This was a great way to tee it off. You're listening to Health Futures, Taking Stock in You. We're down one segment. We got 3 more to go. We're talking Blue Zones Project Scottsdale. Stick around. We'll be right back.
Now back to Health Futures, Taking Stock in You. If you have questions about your own or your loved one's future health care, call 602-264-8009. Now, here's your host, Cypress Home Care Solutions, Bob Roth.
Welcome back. You're listening to Health Futures, Taking Stock in You. I'm your host, Bob Roth, and if you're just tuning in, we're in our second segment here. We're talking Blue Zones Project Scottsdale. It's an Honor Health collaborative for Scottsdale, and if you missed that first segment, you got to go up to our website and check it out. I have both Sarah Kearney and Maureen Aldrich here in the studio, and they teed it up. You can get it at cypresshomecare.com. Click on the media button. Right below its radio show. You can catch this one and many, many more. So, Sarah, thank you for taking us through this, and I really appreciate the origin of this and how it's going. I do have a couple questions. Certainly, I'm looking over to you, Sarah. Engagement. How do we engage people? Sarah did a great job talking about, faith-based partners and schools, and certainly Honor Health and the city of Scottsdale. But how do we engage them? We can talk about the concept of Blue Zones, but how do we get them to adopt some of the tools and the methodologies that you're going to take us through?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's a great question, right? We all know that we have all kinds of different kinds of concerns here we're facing in Scottsdale, but there's, as Sarah mentioned, there's 3 main sectors that we reach. One is people, one is places, and one is policy. And when we work with the people sector, if you consider it that way, it's individual engagement. It's individual engagement by asking for individual pledges. A lot of issues with people and unhappiness and isolation and loneliness is because they don't really have a purpose in life.
Right.
So to help them through purpose workshops to identify their why, what is the reason you wake up in the morning? What is that drives you? And it doesn't have to be some major thing. Sometimes it's just, calling somebody or whatever that is for you, but we help them identify that. We also help them change their home environment to make it a little bit more opt for the easy choice, the healthy choice, making the healthy choice the easy choice by, for example, when it comes to food, put a bowl of fruit outside on your table instead of chips. Take your TV out of your kitchen so you're not mindlessly eating. Eat on a smaller size plate, maybe a 10-inch size plate, and smaller portions. Forget the big family size bowls at dinners and pre-portion your plate and put the rest in the refrigerator.
You mean supersizing is not good? I mean, seriously, everything was supersized back in the early 2000s and the 90s.
Sadly, Americans are obtaining 50% of their caloric intake from fast food restaurants.
Oh, I imagine.
So when you touch on that. So in terms of people, the other option is to try and create opportunities for volunteerism. Volunteerism is down nationally, not only from the pandemic, but even before and after that. So trying to engage them in volunteerism, because actually when you volunteer, it increases your serotonin levels and makes you happier. So from the people perspective, that's what we're doing in terms of metrics for the people section. We're trying to gain 15% of the population in Scottsdale to be engaged. And that is just a tipping point. It's just the beginning, and we hope that after that, the program itself takes off, and we'll have amazing results even past the 5-year project.
Ambitious goals, and certainly I think Scottsdale, may be primed for this, especially having Honor Health as a supporter. And I said this at the break. I mean, Todd's a really great example of really taking control of his life and really living a better life. He's had to, but I mean, it's incredible the transformation he went through, and I think so many people can do that. If people like him, I went through one myself. It's hard work, but it's worth it. It's a healthier and happier life, and I want to put a bold and underlined under happier, because you do feel better when you're eating healthier, and you feel better when you have lost weight and clothes are starting to fit. You feel better when you're engaged with other people. And I think at the end of the day, the recipe that you are all talking about in terms of the Blue Zones Project is for people to feel better, right?
Exactly.
I mean, secretly, I mean, that's what the ultimate thing is that you want to accomplish.
Absolutely.
So engagement, that I love what you're talking about, and then talking about and getting people, to change habits. I mean, we're here at this show talking about how our older adult population can live a healthier, happier life, and certainly all the things you're talking about will lead to that, and that's really, really important. I think in like anything we do today, it's okay. So we're talking about engaging about 15% of the population, right?
Mm-hmm.
What is the true measurement for success and the Blue Zone Project? But more importantly, I'm worried about Scottsdale. How do we measure success in Scottsdale?
I think the best way for us to measure success in Scottsdale with this project is that even though our scope of work is 4 years and 9 months, that this lives on, that it is community-wide, that people, instead of trying or, having to intentionally think about living this way, they are just living this way. They don't have to think about it. They see Blue Zones items in the grocery store that they can purchase and know that's a healthy option. They might see a Blue Zones approved menu item in the restaurants they go to in and around town. That's simple, gentle nudges to, again, make that healthy choice easier for us when we are so caught up in our day-to-day rigor and go, go, go that we are somewhat reprogramming, but meeting people where they're at. We're not telling anybody what to do, but just, encouraging these simple, small nudges to help make those changes.
It's very subtle. It's just, and when you talk about the grocery store and the restaurants, this is being led just here locally. So it requires your team to be out there talking to the proprietors, talking to, Safeway, Fry's, and Albertsons and all the others, Trader Joe's, to really identify those Blue Zone products.
That's exactly what we're doing.
Wow. So there's got to be more than you, Sarah, and you, Maureen, out there. You have to have an army, don't you? And volunteerism is probably a big part of it. Because you talked about what volunteerism does to people.
Absolutely, and that is what we're hoping to achieve by these one-on-one conversations that we're having with everybody in every industry and every sector. We'll be having focus groups the last week of August, 22nd, 23rd, and 24th with different sectors to gather this input. As Sarah mentioned, we're in that gathering data time frame to really identify from the community what is the best way to make this move forward and how can we count on your support. And it's not us coming in and telling you what to do, so that's the most important key part.
How's it being received?
So far, amazing. Yeah. And it's one of those things that while I'm not surprised at how wonderful it's being received, the support has just been over the moon. And every time we talk about it with someone, we will have a local team of 11 when we're complete and our team is fully staffed. So we'll have a mighty, I don't know, some might consider that a good sized team, but we'll have a mighty team of 11 to really do this work in the community and work with our businesses, work with our people, work with our schools and our work sites. But it's also important to note that we do have a great steering committee that's made up of business leaders that represent all sectors of our community. So that includes members from our community partners like Honor Health and Cigna and Goodwill, who really are our champions in this work. And so we've got representative from the city of Scottsdale, from Scottsdale Unified School District, the Scottsdale Area Chamber of Commerce, Scottsdale Community College, activated citizens. So we've got this really great steering committee who's also going to help guide and lead the way to really empower and encourage their organizations, their people, their networks to get engaged and involved.
So you're building out your team. Here's a great opportunity to just, give a shout out. If somebody's listening that might want to get involved in this, how do they reach you guys?
Absolutely. So they can head to our website. So there's a couple different opportunities. There's ways to get engaged as a community member and as a volunteer, and different sector areas of interest. So if there's something that resonates with you, whether it's working with children in schools, working with our aging population, whatever that looks like and whatever that means that's most passionate for you, you can sign up to receive our newsletters at www.bluezones.com/BZP Scottsdale, which stands for Blue Zones Project Scottsdale, so that you can get engaged, as well as if you're looking for a new opportunity, we do have 5 positions that we are now recruiting for, and you can find those at bluezones.com/careers.
bluezone.com/careers.
Correct.
As we wind down this second segment, it is halftime here. I have to believe Scottsdale was a great location for you to kick this off. I think I'm out of time. We'll pick this up in the second half. It's halftime here at Health Futures. We'll be right back. I hope you're enjoying the show. This is your host, Bob Roth, managing partner and co-founder of Cypress Home Care Solutions. If you have any questions about the topics that are discussed during the show, visit us online at cypresshomecare.com or give us a call at 602-264-8009. We are entering now the second half of our show, so stay tuned for more helpful information to assist you with your aging loved ones.
Now back to Health Futures, taking stock in you. If you have questions about your own or your loved one's future health care, call 602-264-8009. Now, here's your host, Cypress Home Care Solutions, Bob Roth.
Welcome back. We're in our second half here, and if you're just tuning in, we have in the studio with us Blue Zones Project Scottsdale, and it's an Honor Health collaborative for Scottsdale. And I've got Sarah Kearney, she's the executive director, and I've got Maureen Aldrich, and she's the marketing engagement lead. If you missed our first half, go up to our website at cypresshomecare.com, click on the media button right below its radio show. You'll catch this one and many, many more. When we ended our second segment, I was kind of trying, and James told me we were out of time, so sorry we ended so abruptly. I was trying to really frame how Scottsdale, while we might have a lot of tourism and winter visitors here, for the most part, I think it's a healthier community than most. And when I think of most, I think of the Midwest. I think mainly of the East Coast. I think of Philadelphia, Baltimore, and D.C., and many of those other areas. I realize that our baseline's a little bit higher, but I would imagine that the goals are going to be, or should I say, the improvements are going to be that much more challenging to attain because our baseline's a little higher. Am I right on that thinking?
Absolutely. And with that said, we are fortunate that here in Scottsdale, we have this beautiful environment, natural setting, which is why Blue Zones identified our community as such a great opportunity, because it is easier to get out and move when it's sunny 330 days of the year. It is easier to go and hike or do a walk when you've got an amazing urban preserve right in your own backyard. Mm-hmm. So and a beautiful green belt too to get out and walk around in. So we have all these wonderful assets in our community that are fantastic for our community and our residents to be able to utilize, but how can we elevate them? How can we get more people utilizing them and taking advantage of the great place that we have to live?
Exactly. And we talk about Honor Health, but you've got other entities behind this here in town. You want to talk a little bit about that too? Because I know you're in the preliminary stages. We're talking about a 4-year, 9-month project. I'd love to know how you came up with that. And it wasn't 5 years. We missed 3 months, but that's okay. But, we'd love to know who else is engaged to really help us get the message out.
Absolutely. So again, back to Todd Laporte being the champion in this work. You know, he had conversations with CEOs and presidents, a variety of different businesses across the community, and Cigna and Goodwill of Central and Northern Arizona really, he had them at hello, right? And that's
Nice.
something I love hearing them talk about when they say, what do we need to do? What can we do to get involved and engaged? And one of the main reasons for them, I think, is not only for the community members and the people that they serve and they're servicing, but for their own employees, that you know, all three of those organizations have a large workforce. So they want to make sure their environment at work is conducive to one that's really healthy and happy and sustainable, so that people enjoy the places that they're working in, and that as an employer, they're providing that opportunity for their team members.
And I think it's really important to really understand Blue Zone doesn't just mean you live longer. You live healthier too, and that's really important, because a lot of people like, you know, gosh, I don't want to live really long because, you know, what if I don't have my mind, or what if my body's breaking down? But those 5 blue zones that you talked about, those people weren't just living longer. They were happier, healthier. They had a better quality of life. And that's what we're looking to do here, right?
Exactly. And that's an important positioning of words, to live better longer and not necessarily longer better. So the
Right.
better component is really important.
Exactly. So that's a great segue into what are the 9 common denominators of the Blue Zone?
I could speak to that. So as we talked about earlier, in the 5 Blue Zones regions across the world, there were, regardless of their geography, there were 9 common attributes that they were able to identify. And once again, as Sarah said, it wasn't something they were trying to do. They weren't trying to live to be 100. It was just something based on their physical environment and their social connections that just nudged them enough to move naturally and eat correctly. And so the 9 pretty much fall into 4 different categories. The first one falls under connections. As you know, Bob, we have some serious isolation, loneliness issues here in Scottsdale and everywhere else around the country.
We do.
But the importance of connecting with other people and creating those connections for people. So, for example, in Okinawa, there is something called a moai. And it's there was a group of elderly women, centenarians, probably average age of 95, that gathered together daily for decades. And in the small village that they lived, one woman would open her window to see if her friends were there, and if they weren't there yet, she'd go knocking on the door to come over. And they were with each other all day. And they were with each other on the down times and the good times. And so one of the things that we'll be doing is trying to create these moais and work sites and faith-based organizations. So the connection is really important. Another one is to connection is family first. So they have multi-generational family living together, and with that, you know, they take care of their elders, and here we don't necessarily do that in the same way. So having them live within their own home or living close by is not only helping in terms of the aging parent, but it's also helping the grandchildren that's with them. It actually proven longevity for them.
And I know you're going through that, and I mean, in theory, it makes so much sense, and it worked a lot. It worked in those 5 blue zones that you talked about, especially in Italy and Greece and Japan. But I mean, we're so mobile here in the States, and I mean, you know, the days of the nuclear family are so gone. I mean, children don't live here with their parents. You know, they go off and do their own career. So I mean, as much as it is important, it's going to be hard to get family units all together.
And family could be your friends as well, right? It's just
Sure.
people that are near you, close to you, and people that you hope, neighbors, you know, whatever that is, it's somebody that's looking out for you and that you could rely on.
So true.
So that's, I think, the significant part. And the third part of connection is to belong. So being part of a faith-based community, attending services a couple times a month, whatever services those might be for you, seems to have also added years to their lives.
I see that. I definitely am one of faith, so I subscribe to that big time.
And it's important to note, too, that it doesn't matter what denomination it
Right.
is. Just having that sense of belonging is what's most important.
And it becomes your village. I mean, it really does. I mean, you connect with the other congregants, and you know, that's your other family, if you will. So
And
it's so
another,
important.
Another place to meet people, to meet friends. How do you meet people? Well, people always say that, you know, so that's a great way. The second category is move naturally, and I think Sarah touched on that too. Again, referring to Okinawa, a lot of the people there won't have tables and kitchen tables to eat their meals at. So they'll sit on the floor on cushions and they'll sit down, and they probably, that's equivalent to about 40 squats a day, the amount of times they sit down and stand up in a day. And they don't have the conveniences that we have in terms of power appliances. And they go out to their garden and they tend to their garden for their lunches and their dinners. They walk over to a friend's house. So this, they don't pump iron. They don't look on labels to see if that's nutrient. It's just moving naturally, which is the equivalent of about 20 minutes, every 20 minutes, moving every 20 minutes.
That's not going to go over very well with Mrs. Roth when I tell her we're getting rid of the kitchen table. No, but I get it.
You should try it. And the third category is a bright outlook in life. So to, again, have a purpose. What is your reason for getting up in the morning? What is that why? And to identify that actually adds 7 years to your life. So let's give that a chance, right?
No, so definitely.
Yep.
I mean, every one of those that you touched on is just so important for, having a sense of purpose, right? I think that's what older adults are always looking for is, what is my purpose? And you hit the nail on the head. I mean, we have so much social isolation. 1/3 of our population, 65 and older, lives home alone. And this pandemic wreaked havoc on those folks. So it's a great time for the Blue Zone for Scottsdale.
Absolutely.
And you hear the music, we're down 3 segments. It goes really fast. And before James throws those fingers in my ear, I want to make sure I sign off the 3rd segment with plenty of time here. But you're listening to Health Futures Taking Stock in You. We're talking Blue Zones Project Scottsdale. Could you real quickly give me the website that send people out to?
bluezones.com/BZP Scottsdale.
We're down 3. We got 1 more to go. Stick around. We'll be right back.
Now back to Health Futures, taking stock in you. If you have questions about your own or your loved one's future health care, call 602-264-8009. Now, here's your host, Cypress Home Care Solutions, Bob Roth.
Welcome back. You're listening to Health Futures Taking Stock in You. We're in our 4th segment. If you're just tuning in, I've got the Blue Zones Project Scottsdale, an Honor Health collaborative for the city of Scottsdale here with me. I've got Sarah Kearney. She is the executive director. I've got Maureen Ulrich. She's the marketing engagement lead. And if you missed the other 3 segments, go up to our website at cypresshomecare.com. Click on the media button right below its radio show. You'll catch this one and many, many more. So, Maureen, when we left off on the 3rd segment, we were talking about what are the 9 common denominators. And I know that we got to 3 of them. We got 1 more to go. And this is, I think, probably maybe one of the most important ones because especially living a healthier, happier life, I know people who are really engaged in losing weight, and getting in shape. They do this gym stuff, but they don't really do the food stuff. And food is such an important part of our life. It is important part of our social life too, because we socialize over meals. I know that you have some secrets here to the 9 common denominators relative to food.
Absolutely. So the category we call it is called Eat Wisely.
Okay.
And Dan Buettner talks about the fact that lots of people go on diets, lots of people join gyms, and most of them don't work. It's not because we don't want them to work, but it's just difficult to make that happen.
Mm-hmm.
So when you work on these things that are simple nudges again, it makes it a lot easier to take care of that. So one of them is the 80% rule, is to stop eating when you're 80% full.
That's a good thing to know.
It's a good thing to know. So use smaller plates, as we talked about earlier, but just there's a saying, actually, there's a whole language in Japan that talks about food and to stop eating when you're 80% full.
Maureen, the hardest thing for me is when I grew up, my mother used to say, do you want to be a member of the Clean Plate Club? And I was like, yes, I want to be a member of that. And I'd have to finish my plate. And if I didn't, I'd hear about all the starving people all over the world. So, I mean, it is a whole different mindset.
It is. Can you name them? Can you name those starving people, right? That's what she made me do. A second category is plant slant. So in the regions, in the 5 regions, they primarily, plants, vegetables, tofu, beans, rice. Not to say they didn't eat meat, but it was more eaten on a celebratory nature. They're not saying don't eat and don't have celebrations with our family. It's just change the way you focus on what you eat, because it'll definitely take care of trying to relieve any of the chronic conditions that we do have based on processed foods, and focusing on whole food, plant-based diet is primarily the way to go.
Right.
And then lastly, one of our favorites is wine at 5. So in Sardinia, there was an actual wine called Cannonau wine. It doesn't have to be that wine, but there's certain properties in that particular wine that tend
Is it a red or white?
It's a red.
It's a red.
It's a red. They have it at some of our local stores here. But it doesn't matter what it is, like I say. Because it also checks the box of several of these Power 9s. It's about working with people, seeing people, connecting with people, whether it's a happy hour or just 5 o'clock and you want a glass of wine, go for it.
Yeah.
So that's
one glass, not like drink a whole bottle.
No, moderation.
Yeah, moderation.
Absolutely.
1 to 2 glasses with friends and family and food, and you can't save up for 14 on Saturday.
There you go.
There you go.
But that wraps up our Power 9. And again, it's just slight things that you can change in your environment. And your
So the categories were connect, which is really important, and that is connecting with people. And, we talk about social isolation, and it's really important for us to get older people connected. And, we talked about family, and we talked about friends, we've talked about faith-based organizations. All of that is really, really good. We've talked about eat wisely, thank you, and we talked about move naturally. And, I think about, when you talk about Japan, I think about Tai Chi and all those other exercises that are being done mainly by older adults today. Nothing, no powerlifting, but it's just moving. And then having the right outlook, having a positive outlook. And that is so important. I know that in myself. If you look at each day very positively, how good things can happen. And for me, I try to do yoga every morning. And it's usually 6 a.m. And by 7 a.m., I have my first win of the day.
That's
and
awesome.
that feels really, really good.
And that reminds me of one last one that we didn't touch on, which is there's got to be a way that you shed stress in your life.
Oh, yes.
And so that we call that downshifting. So whether that's yoga, whether that's meditating, whether it's calling a friend, taking a nap, do something in your day. There's stress everywhere, even in the 5 blue zones regions. It's just that they know how to shed it.
I like naps. And, I've become to like naps as I've gotten older. A 10, 20-minute power nap, it's amazing what it can do for you. It really is. So here we are. We're not quite at the 4-year, 9-month mark yet. We're in the pre-planning stages. What are the next steps for the Blue Zones here in Scottsdale, and how do people get involved?
Absolutely. Well, we are, again, going through a lot of focus groups. We're going what we call discovery, really engaging the community at a preliminary level. And so we will wrap that phase, if you will, probably by December of this year. And then we are going to really go into transformation and activation in January. And that's really going to be led with a community kickoff event that will take place in January of 2024. So we're finalizing what those details look like, and think a community health, wellness sort of festival type environment, inviting the entire community to come learn more, get engaged, sign up to start taking a personal challenge or pledge, and then ways to continue to volunteer with the project moving forward. So really, the foundation of it all will lead us to that blueprint. So we are working on drafting that with support from our National Blue Zones team and policy experts, as well as our local expertise. We're also lapping data that we're collecting. So we just work in partnership with Gallup and the Wellbeing Index. So a survey just went out in Scottsdale as well. So we should be getting some results back from that to see sort of where we are from a well-being standpoint as a baseline, to then determine where we can work. And that also aligns with the Honor Health Community Needs Health Assessment too. And that's, some of those shocking things that we know how wonderful Scottsdale is, and we know what a great community and special place it is. But one of the things that the last Community Needs Health Assessment found was that when one in 3 people say that they have less than one person to turn to in a time of need, that is, it's really scary to think that there's that many people in our community that don't feel like they have anyone to turn to. And that's where that isolation and loneliness and results of the pandemic really are taking an effect. Surgeon General put out an advisory within the last couple of months really talking about how isolation and loneliness is an epidemic and the challenges that will present us moving forward. So we're trying to get on the front end of all of that so that we can bring people together and get people socially gathering and connecting in new and different ways to reinvigorate that level of well-being.
You know, since you're kicking it off in January, we'll definitely have to have you back at the end of the year really to talk about this, because I really want to get people pumped up about this. You know, we have a show that you guys were talking about there. It's going to be on Netflix. It's coming up in a couple days here. So can you tell us, it's August 30th? What's it called?
Live to 100, Secrets of the Blue Zones.
So for our listeners, if you want to learn more about that, it's going to be running on Netflix. It starts on August 30th, but obviously you can digest it at your speed, which is the greatest thing about all the streaming stuff that is out there. Wow. We're winding down. Is there a question I haven't asked? Any last thoughts you want to leave with our listeners?
I was just going to mention with the Blue Zones docuseries, it's a 4-part series, which you'll get the opportunity to travel around the world with Dan Buettner to discover the 5 unique communities and where people live extraordinary, long, and vibrant lives. So if you want to learn more about the original and see the people and the centenarians in Dan's vacation journey, if you will, that's where to find it.
Tune in, Netflix, August 30th. How do people find you again? Website?
bluezones.com/BZP Scottsdale.
Maureen, Sarah, thank you. I so appreciate you guys joining me here on Health Futures. Make it a great day. Have a great weekend. We'll be back next Friday.
There's no place like home. You've been listening to Bob Roth's Health Futures. If you have questions about your own or your loved one's future health care, call Cypress Home Care Solutions at 602-264-8009. That's 602-264-8009. Or visit cypresshomecare.com. Be sure to join Health Futures with Bob Roth every Friday at noon, right here on Money Radio 1510 and 105.3 FM.